Yeah, my name is Dan Sfera. I've been doing clinical research for 21 years now. Started in Southern California. We recently moved to Yuma. My wife is from Yuma, so we moved here 4 years ago now, and we partnered with Up to Par. And then we've started working with other specialists. So Dr. Aluri with neurology and cardiology with Dr. Faceja, and pulmonary and sleep with Dr. Shaw. And we even did some dermatology, but our dermatologist moved back to Orange County. We work essentially with anyone who's not affiliated with the hospital. They're kind of a closed system, and they used to do their own research, but I think they recently closed it. So we're very excited about bringing these research opportunities to underserved communities. And I've been doing it with my partners at Latinos in Clinical Research, which is more of a nationwide initiative. We have some things going on in there, which I'll explain more later on, but we'll introduce the rest of the team too. We brought two other coordinators with us as well. And then we have another coordinator. We have three other coordinators who are now with us. Two of them actually live here in San Luis, and then some of you may be familiar with our nurse practitioner, Jaime Valles. He also works with us, and he works here with you guys. So he's been a tremendous asset for us since we started working here in Yuma. But essentially, our thesis is working in underserved communities and bringing research opportunities to places that don't have the options, which is Yuma, and it's definitely a San Luis. You're seeing a lot of these research centers, private research centers, popping up in the bigger cities for the last decade. Where I came from in the Southern California, there's a research clinic everywhere: Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, Inland Empire. Phoenix is starting to get a lot of research clinics out there across basically every therapeutic area. We have some tailwinds affecting our growth. One of them have been the NIH cuts, which unfortunately have cut funding to a lot of the academic medical centers, but we've been the recipients indirectly because of that. So we started partnering with some academic medical centers. Most recently, we're doing a heart failure study with that one is for our internal medicine and cardiologist physicians. And I think we can do the same model, which we've proven to work in Yuma here in San Luis. I think the infrastructure you guys have here is perfectly tailored to what we do. And we're going to show you guys, we have a few tools that we use to make research possible and accessible, not just for your patients, but for the providers here. We don't want to occupy a lot of your time, of your day-to-day tasks. We actually prefer that your daily tasks remain unchanged, because the more patients you see, the more procedures you guys do. It benefits us indirectly because those are potential study participants that we can enroll in our studies. So what we need the providers to do is to do what providers do best, and that's maintain safety of the patients that are in the study. So things like reviewing lab results, things like reviewing ECGs, things like reviewing concomitant medications that the patients may be on. And we're here to help you guys when it comes to doing the daily tasks. If there's a patient someone has identified that's potentially qualified for a study, we brought some flyers that we could actually pass them around if you want, Lana, please. We have a few studies. If we were to bring these same studies here, we actually have a lot of potential for OBGYN studies. We do have potential for oncology, for internal medicine. We have a lupus trial, which I think, Daniela, if you can put Inato on the board. This is kind of where we could apply for studies. This is a website for the... Oh, yeah. This is where the private research clinics can apply for studies, and it's called Inato, and we have some examples here of just recently. So this is a lupus study, which we are looking to bring to our internal medicine provider in Yuma. In theory, this could be maybe a good study here. I'd be curious to get some of the providers' feedback on some of this type of trial, but if you look at this particular study, there's a treatment period of 48 weeks. There's a 2-week screening period for the patients. So we would have one of our coordinators, similar to Lana or Daniela, here And when a provider identifies a patient, we would go through the screening process with them, and then we will sign in to our workstation, which is Creo. If you can show Creo, Daniela. This is our kind of our management system for the visits. So we would pull up the study that we have for that particular provider. And here's some of the real studies we have going on right now. And if you want to pull up one of them that we have active, just so we can see for today, we have the assessments that we need to do ready to go. And for the provider, there's not much that they need to do except maintain oversight that we're doing the protocol according to good clinical practice, which we would get you guys certified on good clinical practice, which is the foundation for clinical research. It's essentially keeping patients safe while they're in the study, informing them of their rights. We have informed consents for all these studies. All of the studies are approved by an IRB, which is an institutional review board. That's a safety and ethics committee. And so we have the IRB for every study, and then they would approve the clinic. So they would come here and they would do a tour of where the patients would be seen, and then they would meet with our staff in a room similar to this one, where they would go through the protocol, and then if they give us the study, we can start screening activities. And so we would start identifying potential patients. That's where we would need you guys to help, like you or the staff here. We have our own recruiters that do the recruitment for us. Lana actually got her start in research doing patient recruitment. But once we identify a patient, we go through the consent process. And again, this is something that our staff does. So we want the providers to continue to be providers because that's what you guys do best. And we want to be as frictionless as possible. So when a patient's in for a study, you might pop in and see them 5 minutes, review the visit for the day. Hopefully Lana or Daniela or Fernanda or whomever's the coordinator has done most of the visit. And then you could just make sure it's going according to protocol, according to GCP. Have there been any complaints since the last visit? Are they still a suitable candidate to continue in the study? If they're not, you can withdraw them and put them back on the standard of care. If they are, we can continue. And while they are in the study, this part's very important too, and most providers ask this question. While they are in the study, they can continue to come see you as part of their standard of care. So this is something that is an extra additional benefit for the patients. They actually get a lot more attention from clinicians, from the staff. We've been able to find medical conditions through the lab work that we do. We do pretty detailed lab work that's usually not covered by insurance. Very thorough to screen them out of potential studies. We've caught things like hepatitis C. We've caught things that the patients didn't even know they had because of their standard of care, because of research. And so they were not good candidates for the study, but we were able to alert their provider that they should be looked at further because you catch things. I mean, in research, they have a lot of money to spend on looking for the ideal candidate, and a byproduct of that is you get better safety oversight of your patients. So screen failure rates are usually around 50%. So if you find a patient, every protocol is different, but on average it's about 50%. Half of them will screen fail for some reason or another. If you pull up Inato again, Daniela, you just show them an example of the inclusion-exclusion criteria. This would be for the lupus study, which we are applying for right now. There's the IE criteria. There's the prohibited meds. So any of these things could be exclusion criteria. It's pretty thorough, and again, we do this, and through our system, Creo, a lot of the workflow is automated, and there is AI that's integrated into our systems to where if we enter a medication that is exclusionary, rather than relying on a human being to catch the error, the system will actually do it and flag it for us. So by the time the provider comes to us, we will tell the provider, hey, this patient's actually doesn't qualify, their screen failed, but you would still, as a provider, come in and sign off on that visit, and then hopefully find the next patient that would qualify. If they are in the study, which is it's called randomization, they would be randomized to a study arm, a treatment arm. Sometimes it's placebo, sometimes it's the standard of treatment, and sometimes it's the investigational product, and sometimes they are crossover studies. So, and this is actually good for the residents, which, by the way, is a very good thing to put on your resumes, that you have clinical research experience, because as you grow your career in the field, you can do a lot with the research background. We have Daniela, who's an international medical graduate, as she introduced herself. She could actually be, within 5 years of doing this, become a medical monitor, which means because of her medical background, she could work at the sponsor level. So who is the sponsor for the study? I think it is one of the big pharma. She could actually work for this company at some point because of the research experience that she's putting on her resume. So for the residents, for the interns, this is actually really good for the career, and also for the providers themselves, just to have options for the patients, but also options for your own career going forward. You never know when another research opportunity might come your way, and it's good to show that you've had research experience recently. So this is something we can provide for you guys as well. Now, it's important for me to point out that the ultimate say on whether we do a study or not is with you guys. We will present what we think is appropriate based on what we know about your clinic, your organization. But ultimately, you can decide, hey Dan, this is not a good study. I don't think we're interested in this one, and that's fine. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to waste our time bringing studies that we're not going to enroll patients on. It makes us look bad, it makes you look bad, and everyone's wasting their time. So we want studies that you guys are excited about. For example, our PI, our principal investigator, Dr. Smith in Yuma, he is a big advocate for weight loss. So we were able to get on the GLP-1 wave recently, and now they're doing the double and the triple agonist, and we were actually able to do quite a few of those studies over the last 3 years. He turns down a lot of studies, but the ones that he says yes to, we are nationwide amongst the highest enrollers in the country. And so that attracts the pharma to come down here. Hey, where is Yuma? Where is San Luis? How are they doing so well at recruitment? Then they're going to come down here, and there's a lot of ancillary benefits for the organizations as far as working with the pharmaceutical industry, to the point where we can, at some point, maybe even sponsor our own studies. And I know you guys have done that here as an organization as well, where you've sponsored your own trials. So we could work with your local ethics committee, or we can have our own central ethics committee. But as far as lupus, do you guys see lupus patients here? Not many. Oh, okay. And that's actually a perfect example. A lot of these studies, they either want newly diagnosed or undiagnosed, or they want the opposite, which is treatment resistant. So they want one or the two. It's rare to get something right in the middle, and if it is something right in the middle, that would be more appropriate for that specialist, which we don't have a rheumatologist currently in Yuma, and in San Luis, I'm not sure. Do you guys? Oh, here? Ah, okay. That's good to know.
So is this one of the primary studies you guys are doing?
This is just a random example from this week of studies that are out. If you go back, Daniela, to some of the other trials, we have a relapsing multiple sclerosis. We have this one that we applied for Dr. Feseja, and this is a cardiovascular disease. If you want to click on that one, these are actually probably really good for the more underserved areas. That's videos of our staff and site tour. When we apply to the sponsor. They would look at who we are and then look at our staff and the facilities. This is the cardiovascular disease phase 3. So if you go to the IE criteria here, you'll be able to see exactly how they weed out certain patients. The protocol title, just scroll up a little bit, Daniela, please, for the protocol title. Go down. Down, right here. Oh no, that's our experience. Go down a little bit more. I mean, these IE criteria, sometimes there's 30 inclusion and 50 exclusion criteria. So here's an example of this one. This is for people 50 years and older with, they're gonna get the lipoprotein A looked at. They have to meet one of the criteria, the presence of more than 4 heart disease risk factors. So hypertension, smoking, diabetes, age over 65, and then you see all the exclusion criteria on the other side. These are like the abbreviated ones. There's a full protocol where it would be more like 20 and 40, 20 inclusion, 40 exclusion. But we do all of this work ourselves, and then we would give you as the provider the abbreviated version. So if you see someone in the clinic that might fit, hey, reach out to Lana, or here's a flyer, and then we would schedule a screening visit, at which point we would do the majority of the work, and then we would have the provider come look at the visit when it's done, sign off on it, or say, no, I want to do a repeat test because whatever the rationale may be. This is how we work with the provider.
Is the purpose of this for data collection?
It's for data collection for the drug companies, yeah. For the drug companies. And this study, this one might be like a 5-year study, but some of these are actually good because they get the very expensive medicine for free. Even if they were on placebo, there's usually a open label period. So this one, if you go down just a little, Daniela, just a little, here we go. So year 4, so this will become open label after week 24. So even if they were on placebo, if they make it to week 24, they become open label, and then they get it for 4 years. So it does benefit. We've seen a lot of patients in Yuma, and this is why I know it can work here as well, and for other indications. You see compliance, you see a decrease in the BMIs, you see a decrease in the A1Cs, and they continue to see the providers the whole time. The research is just extra for them. I forgot to mention the patients get paid every time they come in. So a study like this would probably pay them $100 a visit, which we give them a CLIN card, which is like a preloaded card that the sponsor would give. And we give them retention gifts at like certain milestones. They get certain gifts, like they get yoga mats, dumbbells, depending on the indication. They give them different things to keep them in the study long term. So it is really cool to see the outcomes in the communities, and especially in the smaller communities, the underserved communities like this one. You don't have these kind of options. And it's really good that organizations like yours exist, and then this is an extra additional benefit for the community, which we've seen the same thesis being played out in Rio Grande. We've seen the same thesis being played out in parts of Nevada, underserved Oregon, Native American. There's a lot of ancillary benefits to the community, and there are benefits to the providers as well, because you have an extra set of eyes on these studies, and you have coordinators like Daniela who are doctors also looking at the patients, and hey doc, this is what we found at their visit 4. What do you think about this? I think we should do this. And then the protocol gives you flexibility to be a clinician essentially, and to maintain safety and oversight of the study. And then we do all the rest of the work. We do the regulatory filings. We meet with the monitors when they come. For every study, every 4 to 8 weeks, a monitor will actually come out, and they will look at the study, all the documentations we have within CREO, and they'll want to meet with the provider for 5 or 10 minutes. So we have a monitor at our other office right now, and she's there for a COPD study, and she's going to talk to the doctor by phone for 5 minutes and then close out that study. We finished a COPD study. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. Patients get paid, the sponsor get their data, the clinic gets an alternative treatment option for their patients, the residents and interns get some research experience. There's a lot of good stuff happening here, and it doesn't really affect the day-to-day of the provider from my experiences. And our job is actually to make your lives as providers easy. That's why we exist. Otherwise, the sponsor can go directly to you guys, but that's not really practical. And that's what we do. Now, there is an additional thing we haven't shown yet. It's called Patient Ace. This is our own recruitment portal. So in addition to recruiting from the providers' practices, like we definitely rely on you guys to refer patients. We run social media ads. So here we have atrial fibrillation, we have COPD, whatever study we have. If we were to have that lupus study, we would have an advertisement for that. And we take care of this, we reach out. So there may be patients that are not part of your practice that we would get into the study and then under your practice. Now, if they want to see you for standard of care, that's up to them and the clinic, but they don't have to. They can just do the study. So we don't just rely on your referrals, although we definitely encourage it because those are the best referrals, the ones that come from the provider. We do supplement it with our own advertising. And the last thing we didn't show, it's pretty hard to pull up on the screen, but it's a project management tool called Monday, which we can plug you into, but it basically gives tasks for every staff member, very granular based on the particular study, the visit that they're in for that week, and it's a weekly project management tool, which if you wanted to, you can be plugged in. If not, just know that we are doing it and we are looking at very detailed, granular level. We even have a quality assurance person that works for us to audit internally our studies. We don't just rely on the monitors from the sponsors to do it. We hire our own QA QC person to monitor our work prior to the sponsor monitoring our work, and this has helped us when it comes to audits and things like that. We have yet to have a FDA audit, but it's possible and we want to be ready if that were to happen. Any questions, or do you guys want to see more studies? Okay, so that's the main difference between private industry and the federally funded research. The sponsor gets all the publishing rights. So there's no publishing rights for the investigators. Unlike at a university, academic medical center, they give you, but if you wanted to do that separately on your own, we have seen sponsors happy with some of our investigators, and they would reach out privately and ask them, would you be interested in doing, they call it investigator initiated trial, and they would give them a grant, and then you would get publishing rights. But these are the industry sponsored, where there's a set budget for what every visit costs and what we have to do, and it's pretty cookie cutter in that regards. We don't get the publishing rights.
Is Dr. Smith one of those people?
Smith is he hasn't done an investigator initiated trial yet, but he just does the regular industry sponsored studies.
He said he was the lead investigator.
Yeah, he's the principal investigator. But there, on industry sponsored trial, you don't get publishing rights.
Oh, so he just is internally.
Correct. Now, there are some, we haven't done any yet, but there are some sponsors that would reach out to him and ask him if he wants to run his own study, but we haven't said yes to that yet. Because usually those are a little bit harder, and you have to plan the protocol, which we can do, but typically we do the industry sponsored trial. Yeah.
Giving cardiac drugs.
Yeah.
What do? They send them right to the ER, or what?
Yes. So the straight to the ER, there is an indemnification clause in every contract that we have, and the investigator, the provider, will sign whenever we agree to do a study. You'll be given a copy of the indemnification clause. So as long as we're following good clinical practice and we're not deviating from the protocol, they will cover any injuries.
So let's say we get uninsured patients down here. What if they're uninsured?
The sponsor will pay for it. Okay, they will, and if word ever gets out that that sponsor does not cover it, no doctor will ever work with that company again. And I've done this for 21 years, never had an issue. I've had one slip and fall in a hospital, and the sponsor paid for it. No questions asked. As long as we're following the protocol, at the end of the day, they want the data from these studies so that they can get their drugs approved. they will cover all costs as long as we're following the protocol. They shut down. We have we have central IRBs. So every study, if it's AstraZeneca or Eli Lilly, they will appoint a central IRB that will be in charge of all the sites doing that study, whether they're in McAllen, Texas, San Luis, Arizona, Fresno. That IRB is overseeing the study at all of those sites.
Do the companies have their own IRB?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you're under the jurisdiction of a local one, like the hospital used to have. They would have to use their own. But if your organization does not, it falls under the central IRB. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They have their own, and we have our first study that way actually because of those Doge cuts, the NIH cuts with the university where they have their own IRB, but we are like a satellite site effectively of their, yeah. But that's only if the resident is an investigator. If the resident is a study coordinator or a research assistant, they are not on, there's this form called the 1572. So any investigator has to be listed on that, but coordinators and other staff are not. You're on a delegation of authorities log, so that would not go through. That would just be the PI or whomever are the sub-investigators.
But the thing is, the PI, the sub-investigators, if they're.
Yes.
Puts you in a bind.
Yeah, they would probably have to get approval.
Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. We would probably find a way to make it work because the principal investigator and the sub-investigators would be the ones on that form. And if there were residents, unless the principal investigator or sub-I is part of that as well, then we would have to go through. I don't know what their requirements would be, but we can talk to them. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And chances are, like, these sponsors already work with those boards in other capacities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And as a private institution like ours, Yuma Clinical Trials, and if we were to do this here, we would brand it San Luis Clinical Trials. We would not fall under that as an entity ourselves. So there's ways. The first PI I ever started with came out of University of Southern California. They were 4 psychiatrists, and they started their own private research site to kind of get away from that red tape and be able to do the studies on their own. But they gave up publishing rights. But they were still able to do both, just depending on the particular study. Papers.
Be authored on credentials that would come with this.
How would this help the residents?
Their resumes going forward?
So maybe not directly in the sense that they're not gonna get publishing rights. Although if we do enough studies, we probably could start getting a pipeline into doing those kind of studies, investigator-initiated trials. When it comes to the industry-sponsored trials, what we can offer the residents would be the experience, so that when they do go out and apply for their own grant, they already have experience on their resume that will make it a lot easier for a sponsor to co-author a study with them. They wouldn't want to work with a novice investigator.
I have participated in a study.
Correct.
During this year, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be considered research naive at that point, so they would have industry experience, which would make it easier theoretically for them to get studies, which we could do.
If they're not recognized, how can they put it on their CV?
They're not published rights, but they have the experience on their resume. So you can list those studies. You just can't own the publishing rights.
Would there be somewhere within the study that would list them as someone who referred? I mean, is that
Yeah.
part, so
Yeah.
somewhere in the study, his name would be
It will be documented.
in there somewhere.
And then we would create a resume for them, like for research purposes only, to where we would list all their studies. If you wanna, I don't know if you can go in Creo and pull up Smith CV or something, just an example of a resume to show you. But yeah, we would basically list like all the studies that person has done with us, and then in theory it would be easier for them to go apply for the IIT.
That was, I think, it is a big thing for them to write papers if they find it interesting.
Yes.
To write a paper.
This is a secondary thing, and we are like there are 2 different conversations here, but there is some overlap, and some of the people within the industry can kind of be a conduit between the 2 worlds, and we could, in theory, have a channel for that. In Yuma, we have yet to work with residents. We've worked just with private practice physicians, so it wasn't a need, but when these drug companies come out, we can ask for that pipeline to be open to us, and then the more experience someone has, the more likely they are to be given the green light to do that. It would take time, maybe a year or so.
Do you publish the studies, or do you?
We don't publish them, no.
So they go back to the company, and the company decides what they're gonna do with it?
The company, yeah, so these are
They
the,
go to
like,
the FDA with the data?
they go with the FDA. This is like a phase 3 or phase 2 right before a phase 3, so they would submit the data to the FDA for drug approval. So we just did, they just published that data yesterday. 7% reduction in BMI on the lowest dose, 12 on the medium, which is not what they got from the injectables. It was like twice as much on the injectable. So to them, it was considered a failure. In any other world, that would be great results. But in this GLP craze, that wasn't. Those were like subpar results. So they go to the FDA with that data, and then they have to have a safety and an efficacy argument to get the approval from the FDA. Yeah, if you were to refer a patient to us, so let's say we're working here with you guys, you refer a patient to us, someone like Alana, who's the coordinator, would schedule a visit with that patient. She would pre-qualify them, and then if they look like they qualify, they would come in and start the visit. Informed consent form would be first, followed by everything else for that screening visit, it's called, on that study. So it'd be vitals, blood work. Every study has different visit structure, but we would just follow the protocol. And our workflow makes it so where we are forced to be compliant with following the protocol, and it makes it very easy for the provider to see that we are complying with the protocol. And it would make that simple for you guys, because effectively you would take what we've already created and just reformat it for your purpose. And that's a example of Dr. Smith's CV. So when he started with us, he didn't have any studies, and in 3-4 years, we've got like a dozen studies. And we have a rheumatoid. We actually had another, on the NADA, we had another rheumatoid study we were looking at today. And we can get these, like we had a spray one for the osteoarthritis, which was amazing, but that drug did not, due to some red tape, never made approval, but it took everyone's pain. It was an ibuprofen spray that was reformulated. Unfortunately, we'll never see the market. No, anyone. Yeah. And, oh, sure. Yeah, we have Dear Doctor letters also. And ultimately, you get the final say, hey, Dan, this is not a good study. It's not appropriate for here. That's fine. We have Creo, so they have their own built-in AI, and then Patient Ace, which this helps streamline some of the pre-qualifications for patients. When they call into a number, they can choose to call in and be automatically pre-screened. So if it's 3 a.m, they see an ad on Facebook and they choose to call that number, it will actually be an AI that goes, it's preloaded with the inclusion-exclusion criteria, and it will ask them certain questions. And if they pass that, they come to our inbox as a lead. If they don't pass it, they come to us as a different type of lead, which may qualify for another study, but not that particular study that they clicked on.
And translates to all the languages?
Not yet. No, we have humans for that, but currently not.
That's where we come in too as well. So like if I tend to not stop working, so if I do get like a lead, it'll come through my phone, I'll take a look at it. If it's something that it qualifies, I'll actually reach back out to them personally. So you're actually talking to somebody instead of an AI once it gets to us. So that's when, like, if they happen to greet us in Spanish, then I'll continue in Spanish then, etc. So I mean, and then there's another thing too, is like people who are research naive, it's like a scam, or it's a little on the sketchier side for them. So that's when we come in as the humans and reiterate them that, hey, we do exist, this isn't a scam. And then we can either we send them a video of what we do, or persuade them otherwise. But once it gets to Patient Ace, we actually go into it and we physically communicate with them as well. If they have any questions or something that the AI couldn't answer at the time, and then we go in and we kind of give them that clarification.
Yeah. Do you want to go to Yuma Clinical Trials? It's a tour of our.
This usually makes them feel a little better when they watch the video because they're like, what's Yuma, what's research?
Hi guys, my name is Katie. I'm the lead clinical research coordinator here at Yuma Clinical Trials, and today we're going to be doing a Yuma Clinical Trials tour. We do all of our studies here in Yuma.